For those of us who take pride in our neighborhoods, our downtowns, our communities, the widespread economic devastation in these areas brings us to our knees. Even high-polluting areas once immune to the subtle throes of economic gyrations have taken a major haircut. Bustling shopping districts replaced by empty stores, throngs of homeless people replacing shoppers. Even the barely conscious have an inkling that something is wrong. Is this America? Is this capitalism? Is this what our grandparents had fought so hard to preserve in World War I, World War II? Is this what our children are fighting for in Iraq, Afghanistan, and God knows where else? Is this what our forefathers had in mind when they penned the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution? Is this freedom? Something is wrong. We feel it in our bones. We know it within our souls, but what? Recently, I read a cover story in Time magazine declaring the Constitution is dead, pointing out the evils of capitalism, etc. What was not mentioned was the alternative. If the Constitution is wrong, evil, or whatever, what is right, fair, perfect? There are only two charters for the destiny of mankind. Essentially, only two roads of thought at this time exist for the future of this planet. One is the United States Constitution, and one is essentially Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto. Now, that may seem as a radical statement, but in fact, it is quite pragmatic. In all the history of this world, two main thought processes for building utopia exist. Everything else are gradient scales of these two overriding concepts. Only two types of government exist. Let's take a closer look at these two main viewpoints. Governments are usually created in their initial stages by the people. The whole point of a government is that groups of people form together to do things they could not do separately. They essentially bind a group of neighbors in a commonality that helps them to survive better. The government would provide a service to its people. It would offer a platform for protection of contracts, including property rights. It would offer a combined defense against aggressors and the protection of what might be delineated as human rights or rights granted by God. These rights would include free speech, the right to protect oneself, etc. The government could only protect these rights, not in any way change or place a lien against them. They would be seen as unalienable. This type of government is actually referred to as a republic or a democratic republic. The people have come together and given the government a small list of responsibilities, the Constitution. Only in the situation in which a citizen is harmed or a contract between two citizens is broken would the government be granted by the people the privilege of reacting. In this situation, you notice that the government is given a privilege to act by the people. Those working in this governmental forum are considered servants to the population. They serve within a very limited charter and cannot increase this charter or their privileges as they are below the privilege-granting body. Because these governments are so small, the taxation is very small for each citizen. Government is limited and the citizens are above the government. All other forms of government fall within the next category. In this category, the government is not limited by a constitution, but can create its own ever-increasing list of rights. Because the government can create its own ever-reaching mandates, it becomes ever more a burden upon its people until it rules with an iron fist, the government being above the people. This type of government is more commonly called communism or fascism, but it also includes socialism and democracy. The reason a democracy is included within the confines of this government is actually quite obvious. A democracy, by definition, is not limited by a constitution, but can vote in or out its charter. And so, in a democracy, those seeking power and wealth eventually vote away the privileges of the remaining citizens, and eventually this falls into the category of communism or fascism. It essentially becomes three wolves and a sheep voting on what they should eat for dinner. Socialism is not much different. Socialism can also be referred to as a welfare society. There's a great emphasis on redistribution of wealth. Those viewing themselves less privileged eagerly support the enslavement of those more privileged. And those more privileged stop working because there's no reward in it. Ultimately, the society begins to collapse and more aggressive forms of communism or fascism take over. The iron fist of government is seen as the only solution to protect the society. In effect, over time, these four names for government are one and the same as they devolve to the same endpoint. In these types of government, those elected or in power are often called officials or leaders, as compared to a republic, in which they are referred to as public servants. Only two types of government. That's it. That's the simplicity. Only two types of government. That which the citizens grant limited powers to the government, and that which the government grants limited powers to the citizens. Not really a complex subject, and in fact, if people actually understood this, a new day would truly be seen on this earth. So why the confusion? Why all the complexity thrown on top of this basic idea? Can it be that because the only way for a government to get over on its people is to confuse them? People will always support freedom. But what if they've been misled as to what freedom actually is? The Communist Manifesto is essentially designed to confuse, to slowly creep into a society and to change it from one heading toward being a democratic republic to bondage. Democracies devolve into socialist societies, which in turn devolve into essentially fascist societies. Should we continue to blindly put faith in our governmental officials? Those that are drawn to governmental positions tend to be the more criminal element of the society. If they can obtain more and more power, there's very little hesitation to do so. History is replete with examples of this, and in fact, more people have been killed by their own governments than any other causes. Our forefathers understood this and established our country as a democratic republic for this reason. It limited the growth of criminal elements in government. Even our Pledge of Allegiance states, "I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible with liberty and justice for all." Note, it says republic. Unfortunately, in the late 1800s, with the passage of the District of Columbia Act of 1871, this changed. Our country was slowly and secretly switched from a democratic republic to a democracy. Government was no longer limited by the confines of our Constitution. Symbols of fascism abound. The symbol for fascism is the fascia, a bundle of sticks featuring an axe, indicating the power over life and death. This is, for all intensive purposes, the same symbol as the Nazi swastika or the communist hammer and sickle. If the swastika were placed all over government buildings, the uproar would be deafening. And yet, the fascia are all over America, and no one even recognizes what they are or bats an eyebrow. Please, look for yourself. Can anyone tell me why in God's name two fascia are on both sides of the American flag within the halls of our United States Senate? America is dying. Is socialism the answer? Within the context of this short video lies an explanation of the apparent complexities hitherto attributed to government. Simple, straightforward. Then why don't we teach this in our schools? Why don't our politicians understand this? Is it possible that something more sinister is at play? Is it possible that a more purposeful dumbing down of the populace is at hand? Sun Tzu in The Art of War, the definitive work on the subject of warfare, states that the way to take down a larger foe is to add confusion to its ranks. Stated more succinctly, a military operation involves deception. Even though you are competent, appear to be incompetent. Though effective, appear to be ineffective. A large country like the United States could only be taken down from within. The greatest confusion that could be most readily acceptable would be the concept of socialism. This would be the first major crack in the wall of a republic. It almost sounds like a great idea. Take from the rich and give to the poor. Hell, even Robin Hood would be on board with that one. And as they say, if you rob from Peter to pay Paul, you can always count on the support of Paul. So yes, America is dying. Is socialism the answer? Absolutely not. Socialism is welfare of the masses. And welfare is warfare. It is a warfare on the hearts and minds of those who accept it. It robs them of their ability to contribute to their fellow man. It turns them into a weight which must be borne by those still competent enough to fight the good fight. It is a submission to inferiority, an embracing of destitution. It serves no purpose other than to destroy those who accept it and burden those who, for whatever reasoning, allow it to exist. Liberal policies, though possibly well-meaning, cannot be enforced by law. For laws are enforced by government, and thousands of years of experience teach us that governments are competent in only one thing: theft. Theft of property, theft of liberty, theft of spirituality, theft. This is not to say that charity does not have its place. Lending a hand to those in need is truly a noble gesture, but that gesture must be voluntary, driven by the good nature of one's friends and not the iron fist of one's government. Freedom will come back to America only when the entitlement mentality has fallen upon the sword of liberty. Together, peacefully, we can restore the republic.